And that is what I mean by the creative economy. It's the individual doing it, and one of the trends and, if you like, the problems also that we have to cope with is the increase in the individual voice and the increase in collaboration. One of the motors, one of the reasons why creativity is so strong, it is the increase in collaboration and cooperation. I'll come back to it again and talk about ecology. But this increase in individual voice, individual vision, individual hard work, individual doggedness, and the increase in collaboration, both online and physical. Very hard to disentangle those two trends. They sometimes overlap and come together. They feed off each other and support each other. There are implications for almost everything we do in terms of company policy. How do you take those increases in voice, those judgments, how do you take the resulting copyrights and patents and put them on the balance sheet? And having capitalized them and put them on the balance sheet, how do you market them? How do you cost them and value them? And can you securitize them? And the increasing volatility that the company goes through because the value will change. But the point I want to leave you with is this shift, as Kip said, not just in special arts, cultural, creative, entertainment, media sectors, but in all sectors, away from systems that are repetitive and can be generalized and can be transferred from one company to another, towards systems that are dependent upon the individual expressing their voice, their ideas, their vision, their imagination in a way that is novel and unique. I just want to leave you with that. And just now, I'll leave you with one other thought. Kip said it's in all sectors. That's absolutely what I agree with. In the last 2 years, the European Union has held a very high-level meeting on the creative economy and agriculture. And a guy called Li Wei, who's a very senior Chinese official, organized a similar meeting in Shanghai on the creative economy and agriculture in China. So we are seeing a shift not only in the traditional creative sectors, but throughout the entire society. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Laz, one of the things that you say a lot, and I hope that you would expand upon, is the idea that the way we have been approaching sustainability is applying old thinking to a new goal. And if we're going to succeed at that, we have to apply new thinking to the new goal. And I wondered if you'd expand on that, as well as share with us the interesting thing about having somebody here from Australia is that Australia, in many ways, is the canary in the global coal mine, that they've been experiencing, or at least are more sensitive to climate change and resource scarcity, at least 5 years, maybe 10 years ahead of the rest of us. So you can see in some of what they're going through the problems that lie ahead, but there's also a hopeful story because of the frothiness of their entrepreneurial community and how they're chasing the opportunities that these problems are posing. So if you could get at that would be great.
Yeah, if I could just pick up on what John's saying, is that the creative ecology exists. You know, we have a network of people here that are very creative. Whether they're connected up is another thing. You know, they might be in their silos or separated. And we need to leverage that. We have some really big issues we have to deal with. We can't do this in our silos. We have to get these networks together. You know, John's point of ecology as system, as network, is critical to get the diversity of opinions and thinking into a room to solve some of these big problems, but more so create opportunity. And I think the key point as to where we channel that creative energy, you know, what we're really looking for out of our next investments in creativity is a key question for everyone here. And if you're not necessarily having a sustainability agenda, then I suggest you do that. And I don't think there'd be one person here who doesn't understand what I mean by that. Now, that gets us to the issue of the distinction between sustainability and the idea of resilience. If you think of sustainability in terms of the word, what does the word mean? It means to sustain something. It sort of starts to draw forth a narrative there that says we want to hold on to something. We've got to sustain this. And it draws you down a strategic path and a strategic investment, which, whilst it may be beneficial in a lot of ways, it may not be the best investment to make all the time. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with it in terms of based on understanding the conditions that we do, but it might not be right based on the emergent conditions that are happening. So we have to be mindful of how we use that word sustainability, because we can sometimes do all the reduce, recycle, reuse that we want to do, and we're not going to change something like climate change in a specific area. We're not going to necessarily be able to save petrol or energy in that sort of way and have a longer life with oil. I'm not suggesting it won't happen as a possibility, but you want to have some insurance in the bank from a risk perspective as to what you're going to put your investments into. So this idea of sustainability is a good idea. We need to be doing that. We need to be understanding strategically what we can actually sustain for what we've got now, as long as you don't get locked into what John's talking about with repetitive systems to hold on too long. So we really need to take a good portion of our creative system and say, what is it to be resilient? Now, resilient is a whole different kettle of fish. It actually deals to a certain extent with the inevitable. While sustainability might deal with the reversible, resilience is dealing with the inevitable. And a lot of these things are inevitable. I don't know if you know, but the measure of 450 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere is being taken to Copenhagen. Now, science at one point said that 500 parts per million was the spot to land in. They've suddenly come back over the last year or two and said it's 350 parts per million. Now, we're currently at 390 parts per million. So we don't understand climate enough to know where we are, is the first lesson about that. The second thing is we need to start putting some money into the bank or an investment in the idea of resilience. Now, human beings, by capability, are resilient species. Now, 200,000 years we've been here, and I think creativity and resilience combined has produced a really interesting set of conditions where we have 6.6 billion people on the planet. You know, I don't think too many other species have grown, apart from, I get reminded of cockroaches, but I don't necessarily like to draw that sort of comparison. The issue is what do we do with our resilience from a creative perspective? And my area of interest is upping the ante in that. How do we actually get better at being resilient? The dictionary definition of resilience talks about to be able to withstand shocks and recoil to function, or some version of that. Now, that's fine. In my view, if you have a crash test dummy syndrome operating in your head, you know, bang, bang, bang. What we've got to do is get ahead of those conditions. And I think the only way we're going to be able to do that is to recast some of these things that we're looking at as problems at the moment. You know, is climate change a problem or is it an opportunity? Is energy depletion or energy reorientation a problem or an opportunity? Now, when I see those sorts of phrased as sustainable issues, they tend to be treated as problems. What we prefer to say is, how do we get ahead of that condition? Now, we see that starting to bubble up in Australia. I'll give you one very quick example, and I don't think this is not necessarily someone's gone and learned how to do this. It's intuitive for us, that we understand conditions, you know, the terms that Kip was using, emergent conditions, emergent capability, emergent action. And someone decides to be creative and get ahead of the game. And it doesn't necessarily happen out of a plan or out of a bureaucracy or out of a hierarchy. It happens because a whole bunch of entrepreneurs, whether they be social, intellectual, or business entrepreneurs,